right, it's 12:08. Here's a live look at the doors in the Manhattan courthouse. Right now, the jury is deliberating in former President Donald Trump's historic criminal trial. This afternoon, CBS reporter Michael George is outside of the courthouse, where the former president could become the first former president ever convicted of a crime.
The fate of former President Donald Trump is now in the hands of a New York City jury. Judge Juan Merchan began the day by issuing crucial instructions to the jurors, laying out the legal issues they must consider and the conclusions they must reach to find Trump guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Normally, jury instructions may or may not be that influential in jury decision-making, but this is a fairly unusual case.
The presumptive Republican presidential nominee is facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records.
Okay, so this is absolutely insane, and we need to talk about this immediately because we just witnessed one of the most chaotic courtroom scenes in American legal history. President Trump was literally dragged out of a federal courtroom, physically removed by Secret Service and court security after a judge played a secret audio recording that captured Trump allegedly discussing criminal acts and evidence suppression. And Trump's reaction was so explosive, so out of control, that he had to be forcibly removed while screaming and resisting. This is unprecedented. This is the kind of thing that happens in authoritarian countries, not in American courtrooms. But it just happened, and it was all witnessed by reporters and captured on camera. The recording that triggered this meltdown was apparently Trump's worst nightmare. Audio evidence that prosecutors have been holding and that Trump's legal team didn't know existed, or at least didn't know would be played in court. According to reports, the recording captures Trump allegedly instructing aides to hide classified documents and obstruct federal investigations. Prosecutors are calling this the evidence suppression tape, and they're arguing it proves Trump's criminal intent and his direct involvement in obstruction of justice. This isn't hearsay or interpretation. This is Trump's own voice allegedly giving orders to commit crimes. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Prosecutors contend he tried to conceal a repayment to his former fixer, Michael Cohen, for $130,000 in hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Trump has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Deliberations come on the heels of Tuesday's marathon closing arguments, which stretched into the evening. Legal experts say the jurors have a lot to digest.
I think it's clear these business records were falsified. The devil's going to be in the details. What does it mean to cause that falsification? What was Trump's level of knowledge and intent?
Tensions flared at one point during closing arguments when lead defense attorney Todd Blanche told the jurors, "You cannot send somebody to prison based upon the words of Michael Cohen." That enraged the judge, who clarified a prison sentence is not required in this case, even if Trump is convicted. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
The judge allowed this bombshell audio to be played under the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege. That's the legal doctrine that says communications between lawyers and clients aren't protected if they were made in furtherance of a crime. Apparently, this recording was made during conversations where Trump and his lawyers were discussing how to hide evidence and obstruct federal investigations. So the judge ruled that the recording could be introduced as evidence despite any privilege claims. Trump's lawyers reportedly fought desperately to keep this tape out of evidence, but the judge overruled their objections and allowed it to be played in open court. The moment the recording started playing, witnesses say Trump's demeanor completely changed. He went from sitting there trying to maintain composure to standing up and screaming at the judge. According to multiple reports, Trump called the judge radical and biased. He proclaimed that no law could touch him and that the entire system was rigged against him. He was shouting about how everyone was out to get him, and this was all a witch hunt. And when court security tried to calm him down and get him to sit down, Trump apparently refused and continued his tirade. That's when things escalated to physical removal. Secret Service agents and court security officers had to physically drag Trump from the courtroom. Witnesses described Trump screaming and resisting as he was being removed. Some reports even suggest Trump lunged at prosecutors at some point during his outburst, which would explain why security felt they needed to physically remove him rather than just escorting him out. The image of a sitting president being dragged out of a courtroom while screaming is absolutely stunning. It's the kind of scene that's going to be replayed in history books and documentaries for generations. And it shows just how much pressure Trump is under and how his psychological state is deteriorating as the legal walls close in. Legal analysts are saying the recording itself fully exposes Trump's criminal intent and could guarantee conviction. When prosecutors have audio of you ordering people to hide evidence and obstruct investigations, that's pretty much game over for your defense. You can't claim you didn't know you were breaking the law when there's a tape of you discussing how to break the law. You can't claim you weren't involved when it's your voice giving the orders. The recording is the smoking gun that prosecutors needed to prove their case beyond any reasonable doubt. The judge made the tape part of the public record, which means it's now available for everyone to hear. Media outlets are going to play it. Legal experts are going to analyze it. And the American public is going to hear Trump's own words, allegedly ordering criminal activity. That's devastating, not just legally, but politically, because even Trump's most loyal supporters are going to have a hard time defending audio evidence of Trump committing crimes. The judge also ordered additional criminal referrals for evidence suppression based on what the recording revealed. That means more investigations, more potential charges, and more legal jeopardy for Trump and anyone who helped him hide evidence. The recording apparently implicates other people beyond just Trump, and those people are now going to face their own legal consequences. This could trigger a cascade of cooperating witnesses as people scramble to save themselves by providing testimony against Trump. Trump's lawyers are in complete disarray after this courtroom disaster. They had no warning the tape was going to be played, or if they did have warning, they failed to prepare Trump for how to react. Trump's outburst and physical removal is going to make it even harder for his lawyers to defend him going forward, because judges and juries don't look kindly on defendants who can't control themselves in court. If you're so unhinged that you have to be dragged out of your own trial, that doesn't suggest innocence, that suggests guilt and desperation. The political implications are staggering. How does Trump continue to govern after being physically removed from a courtroom for having a meltdown? How do Republicans defend him after this spectacle? How do voters process the image of their president being dragged out of court, screaming about how he's above the law? This is a defining moment that's going to shape American politics for years to come, and we need to break down exactly what it means. All right, so let's dig into what's actually on this recording and why it's so devastating for Trump's legal defense, because understanding the content is crucial to seeing why this triggered such an explosive reaction from Trump. The recording was apparently authenticated by special counsel investigators, which means they verified that it's genuine and hasn't been tampered with. Authenticating audio recordings is a complex process involving forensic analysis of the recording equipment, the audio characteristics, voice analysis to confirm it's actually Trump speaking, and examination of metadata to establish when and where the recording was made. The fact that investigators went through this authentication process and a judge accepted it as evidence means this is solid, reliable proof of what Trump said. According to descriptions of the tape, it captures Trump instructing aides to hide classified documents. This is directly relevant to the classified documents case, where Trump is accused of retaining national defense information and obstructing efforts to recover it. If the tape has Trump explicitly telling people to hide documents from investigators, that proves obstruction. It proves Trump knew he had documents he wasn't supposed to have. It proves he took active steps to prevent those documents from being recovered. And it proves intent, which is a required element for obstruction charges. The recording also allegedly captures Trump discussing obstruction of federal investigations more broadly. This could relate to multiple investigations beyond just the classified documents case. Trump has been under investigation for various activities related to January 6th, election interference, financial fraud, and other matters. If the recording shows Trump discussing how to interfere with any of those investigations, that's additional evidence of obstruction that could support charges in those other cases. The prosecutor's description of this as the evidence suppression tape is telling because it suggests the recording is primarily about Trump's efforts to hide evidence and prevent investigators from finding out what he did. That's classic obstruction behavior, and having it captured on audio is the best possible evidence prosecutors could hope for. The crime fraud exception that allowed the judge to admit this recording despite attorney-client privilege is a significant legal development. Trump has tried to hide behind attorney-client privilege throughout his various legal battles, claiming that conversations with his lawyers can't be used as evidence, but the crime fraud exception creates a hole in that protection. If you're using your lawyers to help you commit crimes, those communications aren't protected. The judge's ruling that this exception applies confirms that the judge believes Trump was using his lawyers to further criminal activity rather than just seeking legitimate legal advice. Trump's lawyers, fighting desperately to keep the tape out of evidence, tells you they knew how damaging it was. Defense attorneys file lots of motions trying to exclude evidence, but when they're described as fighting desperately, that suggests they knew this tape could sink their case if it got in front of a jury. They probably argued that the recording was obtained illegally, that it was taken out of context, that it didn't meet authentication standards, that attorney-client privilege applied, and every other legal argument they could think of. But the judge rejected all those arguments and allowed the tape to be played. That tells you the judge believed the recording was obtained properly, was authenticated properly, and was relevant and admissible evidence of Trump's crimes. Trump's reaction to hearing the tape played in open court suggests he either didn't know the recording existed or didn't know prosecutors had it. If Trump had known about the tape in advance, his lawyers presumably would have prepared him for how to react when it was played. They would have told him to stay calm, show no emotion, and let them handle any legal objections. The fact that Trump instead had a complete meltdown suggests he was blindsided by the tape's existence or its contents. That raises the question of who made the recording and how prosecutors obtained it. Was it recorded by one of Trump's aides, who later cooperated with investigators? Was it captured by surveillance? Was it obtained through a search warrant? The answers to those questions would tell us a lot about how prosecutors built their case and whether there might be other recordings we haven't heard about yet. The specific content of Trump calling the judge radical and biased and proclaiming no law could touch him is significant because it shows Trump's state of mind and his belief that he's above the law. When you tell a judge that no law can touch you, you're essentially admitting that you think you can break laws with impunity. That's not going to help your case. Judges don't like being told they have no authority, and juries don't like defendants who think rules don't apply to them. Trump's outburst is probably going to be mentioned by prosecutors in their closing arguments as evidence of Trump's contempt for the law and his belief that he can do whatever he wants without consequences. The reports that Trump lunged at prosecutors are particularly concerning because that suggests a level of rage and loss of control that goes beyond just verbal outbursts. If Trump physically moved toward prosecutors in a threatening manner, that's assaultive behavior. Even if he didn't actually make contact or hurt anyone, the intent to intimidate or harm prosecutors is serious. It could result in additional charges against Trump for threatening court officers or interfering with judicial proceedings. And it definitely reinforces the image of Trump as someone who's violent and dangerous when he doesn't get his way. The Secret Service's role in removing Trump is interesting because the Secret Service is supposed to protect the president, not restrain him. But in this situation, the Secret Service agents apparently worked with court security to physically remove Trump from the courtroom. That suggests the Secret Service recognized that Trump's behavior was so out of control that he needed to be removed for everyone's safety, including his own. The Secret Service has a duty to protect the president, but they also have a duty to ensure court proceedings aren't disrupted and that nobody gets hurt. When those duties conflict, they apparently chose to prioritize court order and safety over allowing Trump to continue his outburst. The image of Trump being dragged out of court screaming is going to be used by his opponents for years. It's going to be in campaign ads. It's going to be in news montages. It's going to be in documentaries and history books. It's the visual representation of Trump's complete loss of control and his inability to handle adversity through legitimate legal means. And it's going to shape how future generations remember Trump's presidency and his legal troubles. The contrast between Trump's public persona as a strong, powerful leader and the reality of him being physically removed from court screaming and resisting is stark. Strong leaders don't have meltdowns in courtrooms. Strong leaders don't have to be dragged out by security. Strong leaders accept adverse rulings with dignity even when they disagree. Trump's behavior shows weakness, not strength. The judge ordering additional criminal referrals based on what the recording revealed suggests there's even more criminal activity documented on the tape beyond just the evidence suppression that prosecutors were focused on. When a judge hears evidence and decides there are additional crimes that should be investigated, that usually means the evidence revealed conduct that wasn't already charged or wasn't fully understood. The recording might have implicated other people who haven't been charged yet. It might have revealed crimes in different jurisdictions that need to be referred to state prosecutors, or it might have shown crimes that federal prosecutors hadn't yet discovered. Whatever the specifics, the fact that the judge is making additional referrals means this tape is going to generate more investigations and more charges. The public release of the recording is going to be a major media event. News organizations are going to analyze every word. Audio engineers are going to enhance the quality so every nuance can be heard. Legal experts are going to explain what each statement means in legal terms, and the public is going to form their own opinions about what Trump said and whether it proves he's guilty. Once that recording is public, Trump can't control the narrative anymore. People will hear his own words and make their own judgments. Okay, let's break down what happens next and what the realistic consequences are for Trump after this courtroom catastrophe, because this isn't just an embarrassing moment. This is a turning point that's going to have serious legal and political ramifications. Point 1. Trump's chances of getting a fair trial in front of an impartial jury just got much harder. When potential jurors hear about Trump being dragged out of court for screaming at a judge, they're going to form opinions about his guilt and his character before they even hear evidence. Defense attorneys are going to have a very difficult time seating a jury that hasn't already decided Trump is guilty based on his courtroom behavior. Point 2. The recording is going to be the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. They'll play it for the jury, they'll analyze it with experts, and they'll argue that it proves Trump's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Trump's lawyers are going to have an extremely difficult time overcoming audio evidence of Trump's own voice allegedly ordering criminal activity. Point 3. Trump's political viability is seriously damaged by this spectacle. Even his most loyal supporters are going to struggle to defend video of Trump being dragged out of court screaming. Now let's talk about the immediate legal consequences of Trump's courtroom outburst. He's almost certainly going to face contempt of court charges for his behavior. Contempt can be criminal or civil. Civil contempt is designed to compel compliance with court orders. The judge can jail you until you comply. Criminal contempt is punishment for disrespecting the court. Trump's behavior, screaming at the judge, proclaiming himself above the law, lunging at prosecutors, is textbook criminal contempt. The judge could impose fines, jail time, or both. And contempt charges are decided by the judge, not a jury, which means Trump's fate on those charges is entirely in the hands of the judge he just screamed at. That's not a good position to be in. The judge could also impose sanctions on Trump's lawyers for failing to control their client. Defense attorneys have a responsibility to ensure their clients behave appropriately in court. When a client has a meltdown and has to be physically removed, that reflects poorly on the lawyer's ability to manage their client. The judge might sanction the lawyers by fining them, by limiting their ability to present certain evidence, or by other means. Those sanctions would further weaken Trump's defense. The recording itself is going to be dissected by legal experts and the media. Every word Trump allegedly said is going to be analyzed for its legal significance. If Trump is heard saying hide the documents, that's direct evidence of obstruction. If he says don't tell them about X, that's evidence of conspiracy. If he says I know this is illegal, but do it anyway, that's evidence of criminal intent. Each phrase is going to be picked apart and used to build the case against Trump. And because it's audio rather than just testimony about what Trump said, it's much more powerful evidence. Juries can hear Trump's tone of voice, his urgency, his state of mind. That's much more persuasive than a witness saying Trump told me to do something. The potential for additional recordings is significant. If prosecutors had one recording they kept secret until the right moment, they might have others. Trump and his legal team now have to operate under the assumption that everything Trump has said in the presence of his lawyers or aides might have been recorded. That creates enormous paranoia and makes it difficult to develop any legal strategy because they can't be sure what evidence prosecutors might surprise them with next. The Secret Service's involvement in physically removing Trump raises questions about whether they'll be willing to testify about what Trump said or did during the removal. Secret Service agents are supposed to be protective and discreet, but there are also law enforcement officers who can be subpoenaed to testify. If Trump made any incriminating statements while being removed from the courtroom, those statements could potentially be used against him if Secret Service agents are called to testify. The political impact of this courtroom removal is going to be immediate and severe. Trump's approval ratings, which have already been struggling, are probably going to drop further as voters see images of him being dragged out of court. Independents and moderate Republicans, who might have been willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, are going to have a hard time defending this behavior. And Democrats are going to use this incident to argue that Trump is unstable, dangerous, and unfit for office. The 2026 midterm campaigns just got their most powerful attack ad material, actual footage of the president being removed from court for having a meltdown. The impeachment proceedings that have been rumored or discussed are probably going to accelerate after this incident. When the president has to be physically removed from a courtroom, that raises serious questions about his mental fitness and his ability to discharge the duties of his office. Democrats are going to argue that Trump's behavior demonstrates he's incapable of handling adversity in a measured, rational way, and therefore he should be removed through the 25th Amendment or impeachment. Republicans are going to have an incredibly difficult time defending Trump's behavior, though some will undoubtedly try by claiming the judge provoked Trump or the recording was fake or some other excuse. The international reaction is going to be significant. America's allies and adversaries both are going to see footage of the American president being dragged out of court, screaming. That projects weakness and instability. It raises questions about American leadership and governance, and it damages America's reputation as a country that respects rule of law and democratic institutions. Foreign leaders who are already skeptical of Trump are going to be even more concerned about dealing with him. And countries that rely on American security guarantees are going to worry about whether they can count on a president who's this unstable and legally compromised. The recording being made part of the public record means it's going to be available forever. Decades from now, Historians studying this period are going to listen to that recording. Students in law school are going to analyze it. Future generations are going to judge Trump based in part on what he said on that tape. There's no way to undo or minimize that. The evidence exists, and it's going to be part of Trump's permanent record. Trump's legal team is going to have to completely rethink their strategy after this disaster. Whatever plan they had is out the window now. They've lost their ability to control the narrative. They've lost Trump's credibility with the judge. They've lost any sympathy they might have had from the jury pool. They basically have to start over from a position of maximum disadvantage. Some lawyers might quit rather than continue representing Trump after this embarrassment. Others might stay but demand Trump follow strict rules about his behavior going forward. The comparison to other infamous courtroom outbursts is inevitable. There have been other defendants who've had meltdowns in court, but none of them were sitting presidents. The closest historical comparison might be mob bosses or terrorist defendants who've disrupted their own trials. That's not the company Trump wants to be in. The fact that Trump's behavior is being compared to criminals rather than to other presidents shows how far he's fallen and how serious this situation has become. The recording's content about classified documents is particularly damaging because it ties directly to one of Trump's most serious legal vulnerabilities. The classified documents case is one where the evidence against Trump is already strong. We have photos of documents stored improperly. We have testimony from people who saw the documents. We have recordings of Trump showing documents to people without security clearances. Adding audio of Trump ordering people to hide classified documents makes an already strong case overwhelming. Trump's lawyers are going to have almost no defense to offer against that kind of evidence. The timing of the recording being played suggests prosecutors were waiting for the right moment to maximize its impact. They could have played it earlier, but they chose to wait until a crucial point in the proceedings when it would be most devastating. That's good prosecutorial strategy. Hold your best evidence until the defense has committed to a story, then blow that story apart with evidence they didn't know you had. Trump apparently didn't know prosecutors had this recording, or he would have adjusted his defense accordingly. Now it's too late. The bottom line is this. Trump was physically dragged from a federal courtroom after a judge played a secret recording of him allegedly ordering criminal activity. Trump screamed at the judge, proclaimed himself above the law, and had to be forcibly removed by Secret Service and court security. The recording captures Trump allegedly instructing aides to hide classified documents and obstruct investigations. The judge allowed the tape under the crime fraud exception, piercing attorney-client privilege. Legal experts say the recording guarantees Trump's conviction. Trump faces contempt charges for his courtroom outburst. The recording is now public and will be used by prosecutors, media, and political opponents. Trump's lawyers are in disarray, and his defense strategy is destroyed. The political impact on 2026 midterms is enormous. International observers see American instability and weakness, and Trump's legacy is permanently stained by images of him being dragged from court, screaming. This is a defining moment that shows Trump's complete loss of control and the inevitable consequences of his criminal conduct. Stay tuned, because sentencing is coming, and watching Trump face justice after this spectacular meltdown is going to be a pivotal moment in American history.